Good.
Wait, hello.
Hello.
Hello everyone, welcome to my panel. So my panel topic is about how on pad growing water lily in small space. So as you can see, this is a very non-furry related kind of nerdy panels, but I hope you will enjoy it. I have prepared a lot of stuff here. So first thing is, let's see what kind of today's agenda, like what's thing I'm going. So basically I plan to do a panel that is maybe 30 to 40 minutes of me doing the lecture and then leaving for 10 minutes each to asking questions. And also you can come here to see some of the exhibition I bring up. And also if you want to try something right now, you can also have 3 plants to pick up directly there. So I bring 3 extra plants just for us. Hold on a second. Can someone help me to close that door? I feel like it's a little bit loud inside. Thank you. Yes, so our agenda today is basically the lecture structure is starting with what are water lilies, and then I will having some topics about how to choosing the correct variety, and also some deeper dive into how to care them like more in detail. And after that, I'm gonna just give you some like transport sellers for the plants, because when you buy plants, it's most common thing happen is you will find some sellers who sell the plants which is not correct variety you are looking for. So here I give you some option to where to looking for them. And then finally I will give you some professional links website for you to see. And also, since we're talking about home gardening today, but also I encourage everyone to just go check your local botanical garden, and they will have good exhibitions there. Finally, this is a question and answer, and after that, if we still have time or everyone are interested, we have some optional content that is talking about more details thing about the water lily to give you some more information. And after that, this is kind of like the outline trying to show you. This is exact setting at my home. So this is the goal we're trying to achieving. After this lecture, you're able to building some small aquarium like this in your room. So basically, you're setting up some tiles to grow some water lily, and if you choosing the correct variety, you basically have flower to see every day. And that's some bigger segment, so I use those 27 gallons of container. But on the same time, you can also say this is an example online. You can have some smaller segment like this. So the key here is basically this topic today is, even though most of the time when we see the water lily outside, they are very huge, but they are actually a group of water lily which can be grown in a super small space. You can even keep them on your tabletop. So that's what I try to deliver today. So the first thing is we want to know what are water lily. Actually, before I jump into this topic, how many people here have some background in either botany, horticulture, or home gardening? So you can raise your hands. Okay, we have some. Yeah, that's good. Yeah. So don't worry. Even though this panel maybe have more terminology, but I will explain everything. So even you have no background at all, you can still understand them perfectly. At least that's what I think. So here, the first thing we have some picture about water lily, and on the left is some water lily growing in the smaller container. That's my small garden here, and on the right is a botanical garden, and you see water lily growing in those settings. So water lily are basically aquatic plants, so they need to be grown in the water. And the structure of a water lily is, you will see those lily pads floating on the surface, but all of them have the stem connecting to the roots, so the root actually are rooted in the mud below the water. And that's the basic setting. And specifically or strategically speaking, water lily are all the species in the genus Nemesium, including their horticultural cultivars. So that's a sentence with so many terminology, and I will try to explain everything to you. So first of all is what are species and cultivars. So species is a concept in biology, means any kind of animals, plants, whatever you see in the wild. So basically nature creates them. So for those wild species, we gave them specific name for easier communication. And the way we mark those species is using those scientific Latin name, and they have to be writing in this elliptic way. So that's why you see all the species name here are writing in this way. So Nemesium is their genus name, and there are some species there. So I'm showing you 3 species here. And another concept I want to just bring up is called cultivars. Cultivars basically are artificially breeded stuff. So big people want to grow those kind of things, and they also want to creating something new. So that's why they artificially crossing some of them or selecting something that looks more interesting. So they grow them there. And for the cultivar, some famous cultivar will get named and be sold on the market. So that's why they have some names like Salmon Fantasies, Red Flare, or Jealous One. So there are some very funny names. For all those names, they will writing in the regular text. So that's a cue you can get. So in the future, when showing some name, I won't identify it as a species or that's cultivar. But at the same time, for today's lecture, I will just go with variety because everything can be called variety at this context, just for easier understanding. Another thing I want to bring up is what is called a genus. So specifically, genus is just the way that scientists try to classify stuff. You can think about this as a family tree. So people try to organize every plant into a group, and the smallest unit of those species called genus, you can think as the smallest family. So every member in this genus, they are very similar to each other. They have some common traits, and they just look slightly different, so we call them in the genus. And the water lily genus is in the name called Nemesis, which is the Latin language, so you don't have to worry about how to pronounce or read that. So basically, I'm trying to bring this concept called genus. And after that, I want to point out another thing. So some people coming today maybe think about what I'm talking about is, what I'm going to show is the lotus. Well, actually, lotus, even though they're also aquatic plants, but they are very different from water lily. And I won't touch anything on lotus today. I just want to bring this up because some people may get confusion because in many other languages, the lotus and water lily, they even share the same name. So you will see this kind of phenomenon in the future when showing something in the slides. But first thing first, I want to say, so most of any species we're talking about is here on the left, so water lily. They look like this. They have lily pads attached to the water surface, and all their lily pads have those kind of like notch on the leaves. You see they are kind of like opening. And for the lotus, most of the lotus will grow a pad which is very round and also upheld above the water. So that's the structure of lotus, which is not something I will talk today. So that's just two pop-up slides. And next part is I will show you how diverse the water lily group is. So water lily is, and also many of its cultivars are very diverse. There are so many kinds of water lily you can grow, and they are very in different size, colors, flowering time, and cold tolerance. Before I dive into the size, which is a key topic today, I want to show you something about cold tolerance because that's how people classify the water lily in the simplest way. You can think about the water lily has two different groups. The first group is called hardy water lily. Hardy is a term in horticulture, means cold tolerant. So those kind of hardy water lily will have a structure like this. You will say they have a structure called rhizome. The rhizome is just a very compact stem. You can bury it in the soil, and then they will grow those kind of lily pad above the water. That's the structure of the hardy water lily. And here is a diagram to show you their structure like this. And another group of water lily, we call them the tropical water lily. Another name that most of the marketers will call them is called annual. I personally think that name is kind of offensive because they are actually perennial species. They can live for many years. It's just many people in the US are living in the colder environment and they don't want to harvest them during the winter to help them overwinter, so they're just growing them in an annual way. They grow them in the spring and they bloom in the summer and they die in the fall, which is kind of sad for them, but that's the tropical water lily. The funny thing about tropical lily is they don't have a rhizome structure under the soil. So you see I have two pictures showing here. Basically that's their root, and they don't have a specific rhizome. I also brought a live small water lily over there in the water tub. So after this lecture, you can just come closer to see a live plants to see how they look. And this is a diagram of the of the tropical water lily. They just look like this. And sometimes tropical lily actually can grow a small tuber. A tuber is a storage form of the plants which are very small, like a small nut buried in the soil. They were producing those tumors when they try to go dormant, which is also a way if you want to grow water lily in some tropical lily in the colder area, and you don't want to bring them home to make them overwinter, so you can force them to forming a tuber and then bring that small tuber plants in home and overwinter like in that way and grow them in the next year. So you can have the tropical lily grow like a perennial plant, which means survive for multiple years instead of just let them die outside. So that's the basic structure of two kinds of water lily. And after that, I want to bring you in the scene was the key topic today is the size. There are so many water lily which are very adapted to living in different space. As you can see, there's an example here. I basically growing them in the like Starbucks coffee cups. This is just this size. So if you are very experienced gardener, you can basically grow in the water lily in your club. I originally thinking I want to bring one of those water lily here, but I feel like the traffic and the shipping is too hard, and I don't think they're gonna survive until here. So I did not bring that. So, but that's what you can see. I will give more example on this specifically later. So the next step is I want to define how small is a small space, because depends on how small you can get or how much space you can give them. There are several different options you can have. The smaller small space or the smallest space you can go, I would suggest any beginner starting with some container that around 8 inches. The coffee cup one, the example over there looks very like attractive, but also they're very hard to grow for beginners. So I'm not really recommending that method to anyone here, unless you want to know more details and talk with me later. And so that's the first thing is called the small size, around 8 inches. You can buy some those kind of 3-gallon storage bin to grow them. That's those kind of bin are very cheap. And also, there's another way we call them kind of like, I would call them like medium small size. So they are small enough to be put on the table, but also they're not that tiny and micronized. So it's kind of like 20 inches container. You can get those kind of like 17 gallons like storage bin to grow the water lily, which basically is what I'm using. Or you can use a fish tank if you want to see some transparency on the side. And also you can build a small ecosystem on your own. You can put some fish, put some snails, and to make them looking more pretty. But here, the first two option is more like budget-friendly option. And you can also go with some more stylish and aesthetic stuff here, like this bowl. So this is actually my friend. He asked like 2 water lily seeds and just sent them last month. This is his setup. So he having those kind of structure like that. So after I define those kind of space, and now I'm going to tell you what kind of variety can survive in 2 different settings. The first setting is those in the small space. Small space, there most of the leaf vivipary tropical water lilies, they can adapt to those smaller space. As I showing before, those water lilies can grow even in the teacup. Or if you want to go some hardy water lily, you can choose some variety which they call them halova. So that's an example showing on the right. So the on the right, which is just a small container, kind of like just this big. I didn't have a picture that I compare the size of my hands next to it. So that's almost like the smallest hardy water lily you can get. But in this lecture today, most of the variety I'm introducing are tropical lilies. So even though tropical lily are like notoriously for their non-cold tolerancy, they cannot be grown outside over winter. But other than that, tropical lily is almost like overall like much better than hardy lily because they are more prolific bloomer. They can have flower basically every day. So you have flower to see every day, and they're also fragrant. They're also slightly more shade tolerant, which are some details I'm going to touch on later. And then, as I said here, they can adapt to even smaller space. So those kind of like teacup water lily, only tropicals lily can do. And here you may see a new terminology just pop up called leaf vivipary. What is leaf vivipary? I will explain that concept right now. So leaf vivipary is a concept, especially in botany. That means they can producing a new plant. And botany is just like creating new words. So if a plant is small, like a baby, we call them plantlet. So those plants can producing new plantlet or even new plants when the plants are still attached to the parents or still attached to the mother plant. So leaf vivipary means a type of tropical lilies. They can grow smaller water lily just from the leaf. So here I can show you a sequencing of pictures. You see on the very left, that's the water lily leaf, and you see in the center there's a fuzzy spot. Those fuzzy spots actually can grow a new water lily in the future. So you see, I just soak them in the water for around maybe 2 weeks. They will grow a small bud here. And then on the final picture here, you can see they're starting to grow those kind of roots. And once they're starting to grow roots, you can transfer them into the soil. So that's why I transfer them in the teacup. And eventually those kind of leaves, they will grow a floating leaf, which means they are mature leaves. They can floating on the water surface, and they will growing bigger, and finally they will have flower like this. So that's a very like fascinating type of water lilies. They can grow those leaf viviparity, so they can grow smaller baby out of leaf. I actually bring a bag of leaf, probably 3 to 7 lily pads here today for anyone who are interested to try this method. You can bring lily pad home and try to just recover them. And if you're lucky, you probably can get a new plants from them. So that's a very interesting way to grow water lily. And also just to mention that not every water lily can do there. Only a specific group of water lily they can do that. So here I can bring you some more example of the leaf vivipar water lily that I have. So I have this variety. So you see this is a variety because the tag is regular. It's called Marasaki. I think this breeder actually in Asian he breeds this variety. So that's the species I have. You can see I grow them in those like 17-gallon storage bin, and that's the flower they have. They have very like delicate like purple flowers, so that's variety you can have. Another variety I actually brought today is this one. That is a species named Nemethium microthena. So microthena in Latin means small flower, so that's what they call small flower water lily. You can see I just grow them in a smaller cup like that, which is even very, very small pot, and I put them in a bigger container like this, and they will have flower like that, so that's their purple flower. And so this example showing you is the microthena growing in the slightly bigger segment, like 17 gallons. They can also be grown in the 10 gallons fish tank like this. Once they grow in the fish tank, they are very adaptable to adjust into the smaller size. So you say that's how big they can go. They can just be a 10-pound size. And here, I want to show you a video here, which is so say that's the small size. I just grow them in those smaller tub, and I compare them with the size of my hands. And I can also show you what they look in the inner pot. So that's the pot they're growing inside. I will explain these details later, how you're planting them or how you're potting them. And there's another video I have to show. Is this first one. Remember the previous slide? Yeah, remember in that previous slide, there's that slightly bigger cups, they're growing in the container like this, and that's the cups they're growing in, and they're in the bigger container. So those kind of water lily, basically, they are very adaptable. When they are growing the different containers, they are having the different size. Now let's back to the slide. Okay, good. So yeah, this is just the knowledge about leaf water lily. Basically, is the water lily variety that I recommend the most. They are very adaptable. They can be grown in those smaller space. But if you do have some space for some bigger space, like medium space, you can try almost every tropical. So tropical lily have a very interesting ability to be adaptable to most of the space. Even though the space like that big, they can grow perfectly fine, they can flower. So that's a variety I grow on the live. It's called Galaxy. I can show more photos later about how variable they are in the different settings. And there are also some small to medium hardy water lily you can go. So this is another variety called Coronado. And that's the flower they grow in a smaller tub like that. But at the same time, also recommending like tropical is overall better than the hardy if you can grow them indoor. Yeah. So here I want to bring up another concept called plasticity of tropical lilies. So plasticity is another term which means the ability to change the size in different settings. So most of the tropical lilies, no matter what kind of they are, so as I've mentioned before, we have some leaf viviparity one or some other water lilies, they are all able to change size. This is some interesting feature for tropicals. As you see here, this is the same species or same variety called Marasaki. When they grow in the bigger top, they will have bigger flower and have bigger spread. But if you just stuff them in a cup like this, they can still make flower in a smaller cup, so that's their plasticity. And also remember that galaxy I showed before. When I grow in my galaxy, I grow them in the bigger tub like this. But also my friends online, they had shown example like that. You can also stuff them in a small tub like 8 inches or 10 inches. So that's what I'm showing here. They are very elastic and they are very plastic. They can changing the different size. That's why I'm recommending this if you want to try growing some in the smaller space. So after that, I want to show you another very funny example is how big they can go. So as we know, so most of the water lily are showing here, those leaf developer ones, they can be growing smaller size, but in nature or in some bigger ponds, they can also even grow in the very big settings. So that this is for people who have maybe a pond or a backyard and they want to try something fun. This is also something you can do. So you see here, I'm in the botanical garden, so that's a leaf ripary. I'm showing those fuzzy buds as you can grow in the leaf. And here I will show you, so that's a plant. Actually, that's from a leaf. They're just floating on the water surface and they can still bloom. So that's a very funny thing, you see. That's basically a leaf floating on the water, and when they're getting older, they will grow a new plant. And that new plant not even need to be rooted in the mud, and they can still have flowers. So that's overall how they look at the end. You will see the mother plant is on the far left, so that's the mother plant. And all those smaller flowers here are actually babies creating from the leaf. So that's a funny feature you can do. If you have a big backyard, you have a big pond, and you want to try something very cool, so that's the thing you can go. Basically, every knowledge I share here today is not only applied to the smaller space, you can also be growing in a much bigger space. And there are so many very cheap plastic pool. You can get dog pool or kid pool, which is only 20 bucks or something, and you can get almost a six feet pool, which are very useful for you to grow any water lily if you want to try them in some bigger setting. So yeah, that's an example of how variable they are in the different size. And now we're going to give you some real hand-on details about really how to care the water lily after you have seen so many examples here. And basically every water lily, they need full sun, which is probably the only part a little bit harder for some people if you don't have a sunny house, like your room direction is not very good, you don't have a direct sunlight on the window. So probably what you can do is you can get some grow light. Most of the time water lily are not that, so the varieties I'm recommending today, the leaf developer ones, they are not that needed. So kind of 5 hours of direct sunlight or grow light exposure will help them to bloom. So that is the exact setting I have in my home. I bought a grow light and I kind of turn lighting on for 6 hours per day, but if you want to pay more electricity and you can give them more sunlight, grow light, and they will have better bloom. But in general, those kind of water lily are just slightly easier than many others. And overall, water lily are very sun loved. They prefer full sun and they almost never get burned. So that's another advantage if you're in some space, especially Florida. Here, this is really hot. We have very hot, steamy summer, and water lily actually loving this as the tropicals can do very good. So that's another reason why I want to have a water lily panel at Florida, because many people here maybe have the best environment to grow them among the entire US. And also, I will show you something more. The Florida actually is almost the biggest water lily breeding center in the US, and we can show you more later in this slide. And another key component about growing the water lily is the soil that you choose. So as you're showing before, water lily, even though they're aquatic, they're not free floating, or they have to need some water to let them root, absorb the nutrient. So you need to get in some loamy soil or clay-rich soil, which basically any soil. So you can test this very easily. If you grab a bunch of soil and you throw them into the water, as long as you see most of the parts are sediment into the bottom, which means they're loamy soil. Otherwise, if some soil they're floating on the top, especially those potting mix you can easily get from the market, those are not recommended or just not applied to aquatic plants because they are very light. They're basically very light organic matter. If you put them in the water, they are just floating on the surface. So those soil are not be used for the growing water lily. So at the same time, I want to mention Water lily does need clay soil to survive, and you don't want to use any pure sand or just smaller rocks because those kind of things cannot provide any nutrient for them. So you still need to deal with a little bit muddy, but don't worry, as I will show you some methods in the future and in the next slides about how to set up the pot to reduce the soil amount in the pot and make sure your potting system working very clearly so you don't have those muddy water for long. And then the next thing is about the temperature, especially if you want to grow tropicals, you want to make sure the water temperature never drop below 50 Fahrenheit or for long because they cannot survive that cold. And if you want to just helping your tropical to overcome the winter, you can add a water like a aquarium heater, or if your room is just warm enough over the winter. But as long as you have a grow light or aquarium heater during the winter, you can actually see the tropical blooming in the winter. So the picture on the right, you probably can see some like snow outside my window. So that was the picture I took in the February in Kansas. So you see the flower actually blooming perfectly, even though it's winter outside. You basically can have a flower to see during the winter, and that's another fantastic thing about tropicals. As long as it gives them the perfect environment, they are blooming like infinitely. And the final thing is, or the case step I want to bring up is how to set up the pond. The same method here I'm talking about is called double potting, which basically means you have a smaller pot in the bigger tub. Like this is the diagram showing that, and this is the real, the later is not showing. So here is the more realistic example that I grown here. So you see, basically you're putting a smaller pot in a bigger container, which is called double potting. And you see, even though I have a big plastic pool like this, I'm still growing my water lily in the container like this. So you see, there's all the inner container. And let me tell you another secret. If you go to a botanical garden and you see a water lily pond like that, let me tell you, they also growing their water lily in the pot. So the pot is just under the water and you're not seeing them. The water lily is not free growing on the bottom of the mud because growing water lily in the pot are easier for them to repotting next year and also dividing them to help them to grow better and also easier to management. And also growing the water lily in the pot can reduce the mud need, so you don't need that much soil to put into the pond, can help you to maintain the water quality is better. Yeah. Another trick most of the botanical garden will do is they were adding some black color dye in the water. So that's why you see the water are very dark color. So those are not natural color, those are black color. The black color dye can help to prevent like too much sunlight into the water to help to make the algae bloom, so you can prevent algae bloom. And also they can help them to hide those pods. So that's exactly the garden manager told me. So they put those things there so you don't see the pods beneath. So you will feel like, oh, the lily pad actually free growing in the bottom, but they're not. So that's a funny side note. And another thing is very critical is the tropical water lily. Actually, if you're growing in the smaller size, they can keep the smaller space. But if you're growing them in a bigger size like this, on the right, if you're growing in the bigger pot, their leaf can even bigger than your hand palm or even getting bigger. So that's another thing, kind of like you have to remember, if you give them smaller pots, you basically restrain them and force them to grow small instead of letting them spread out too much. And after that, I want to show you some basic knowledge about how to planting those two different water lilies. So first thing is, if you want to try some hardy lily like I do here, you want to find some container like pot that for the inner pot, some shallow and wide, because hardy lilies, they have those kind of rhizome only grow like horizontally. So I can show you a diagram like this. That's how they're getting mature. So this is smaller plants when they're getting mature. Their stem, their under soil rhizome will extend like forward. So that's why you want providing enough space in front of them so they can grow. And for the tropical lily on the other side, they actually don't have a rhizome. That's the first thing. And then they only grow vertically. So that's why you want to keep them in a pot that's slightly deeper. You don't need to providing them a shallow pot. And they can grow just like this, and they are perfectly fine in the smaller pot like that. And finally, the growing guide I want to mention is about the fertilizer. You definitely want to have some fertilizer regularly applied to the pot, maybe bi-weekly. So basically 1 pot, 2 weeks. But the thing you want to remember is you want to use either aquatic specialized fertilizer like a pond tap or some slow release fertilizer which means the fertilizer nutrients are slowly released into the environment. Or you can have some regular soluble granular fertilizer, but you want to wrap them in the paper and then stuff them into the soil. All those methods are trying to make sure there not too much fertilizer spill into the water, because if there are too much fertilizer in the water, it will cause the algae bloom. So the water will look very green or a little bit like muddy. So all those methods of applying fertilizer, if you apply them into the soil directly, water lily can get nutrients from the soil and they will outcompete the algae, and your water will look so much cleaner by doing this. So that's another thing I want to mention about how to grow. And here I just want to briefly talk about how to grow water lily. So if you want to know more details, I can show you some more professional website later, and you can get more information there. And also you can also talk with me to asking any question if you're interested. So after those things, I will talk about how to or where to get some authentic water lily or the good variety. So here I only recommend three stores. So the first thing is called Chai Lily, which is the store in the St. Louis, and they basically sell some varieties that is very like classic or old, and they're good. They're in good quality and also very beginner friendly. And second one is called Pond Mega Store, and the third thing is aquatic oasis lily, which is a very fancy store. They import some very good variety overseas from Thailand, from like China, from some other stores. And their variety are a little bit expensive, so up to you. I would recommend you start with the first two first. Another thing I want to mention that you should always buy water lily as a plant, or you want to say that this is either a rhizome, either a live plant. Do not buy water lily from seed. The first thing is water lily do have seed, but their seeds are very hard to grow. You almost need a year, more than a year of care to make sure they have flower. Another thing is most of the water lily seed you see online sale, they are fake. They are not really water lily seed. They just try to scam you. So don't buy any seeds. It's not worth it for you to try unless you want to be a water lily specialist and hybridizer to doing something like that. But that's just my warning. Another way that you can get water lily is there actually a Facebook group called Water Lily Trade USA, where many people share their extra copies, extra divisions. You can join that Facebook group chat, even though I know Facebook is a little bit like ancient way of socials, but they do have many useful resources there. And final thing is, if you really want something to try, you can also talk to me. I do have many extra copies. I only brought 3 here today. You can, if you're very interested, you can just grab a plant there. I have 3 plants there for you to grab. And then another thing I really want to warn you. The first thing is never buy water lily seed, and next thing is never buy from any store that either on eBay or either on Amazon, which are very like mass sale. Those kind of like box sale stores, they actually just getting whatever variety they can get and sell you, and you probably never get the correct variety you have. Maybe the worst case is maybe you're trying to get for a tropical lily and they send you a hardy lily and they cannot grow in the smaller space. So that's probably the worst thing that can happen. Actually, why I'm specifically saying there, because I actually bought plants from the first store because they're cheap, and back then I didn't know they're actually basically a scammer store. So I tried like 3 months to grow all the water lilies they sent me, and none of them are correct. So I'm very upset. So that's why I'm saying like any store on eBay or Amazon, they are not really trustful. So don't buy anything. Don't even just waste money on there. And that's another warning. And then I'm going to show you some other professional websites. So this is the first website I want to show you. This is a very good, even though they're very old website, so they're kind of like last 90s style, but they have almost like everything you need to know about how to grow a water lily. It's called Victoria Adventure. The name Victoria is actually this kind of like water lily black plant. So they are not officially water lily. We call them the giant Victoria water lily. So this is those kind of like lily pads you see, they're bigger enough to holding a person, like maybe holding 50 pounds, something, those very huge, gigantic leaf. Those are actually called Victoria lily. So they are not technically water lily. So they are relevant, but they are not in the smallest family. As I say, they are not in the same genus. So that's a website. And also, if for anyone who want to try recovering the vipary leaf to a live plant, you can go to this website. They have very good website, a white page says the vipary water lily propagation, and you can see how to recover the plants from there. And the next website I want to say is actually Florida Aquatic Nurseries, which is actually the biggest nursery in the US to grow water lily, and they have so many varieties there. Although the only thing is they don't sell plants to individuals. You have to contact your local sellers, local like botanical garden to get any plants. So, but they do have many information. This is the best website, I guess. If you want to know some variety, so you want to say what are some good colors there, what are some good variety here, how they look. So this is the information website, even though they don't sell plants. And the next website, or if you don't remember any other website, this is probably the website you want to remember, is the International Water Lily and Water Garden Society, which is the official society like website for all the hybridizer and gardener for in the water lilies world. And they also have a Facebook group. So if you want to join that Facebook group, they will have many useful information and many hybridizers showing their new variety in there. And I want to show some more interesting thing about this website here, because they have some resource called Plant ID database. Basically, you can type any name here and they will show you the details of it. So this is the page, information page of that microcena water lily. They even tell you, so if you want to try creating some new variety on your own, they even tell you what their offspring maybe look like, or some variety they have their parents and how their parents look like on there. Some very interesting information. And another interesting information in this website is, as an official institution, they will also issue some certificate for the botanical garden who has enough water lily collections. So if you go to their membership and go to the botanical garden members, you will see a list of botanical gardens who are famous for their water lily collection. And here in Florida, there is a very good botanical garden called Naples Botanical Garden, which is actually a garden that collecting so many very good tropical water lily varieties. And also water lily actually have yearly new variety competitions. So hybridizers around the world, they will send their new variety to the US. So half of them, especially tropicals, they will be growing in the Naples Botanical Garden. So you will see many brand new, very fresh and amazing water lily variety over there. Although I've never been to there, I wish one day I will go to there. That's another kind of on my bucket list. I want to visit that garden to see all the new variety. So that's everything about the website resources. And next part is about some botanical garden. Even though I've never been to the Naples because they're in Florida, but I did go to some gardens in Midwest, which are also famous for their water lily collection. The first is Denver Botanical Garden. Amazing garden. They have so many hardy water lily collections there, a very beautiful settings, and you can learn a lot from them. And another garden is here. I'm from Kansas, so next to the Kansas City, there's the Powell Garden. They also have some very beautiful water lily collection there. And the final thing is Missouri. Missouri Botanical Garden has many variety too. And what's really interesting about Missouri Garden is, even though they're in the Midwest, they have very harsh winter. They almost have all the water lily as tropical lilies, so they probably just overwinter them in the greenhouse. But that's definitely a very interesting feature you can see. So that's the 3 gardens I've been to. So if you do have some local garden at your place, I recommend to go visit your garden and just see what kind of water lily collection they have. And that's basically everything about this lecture. And if anyone has any question, you can feel free to ask. And also, good. We still have 20 minutes left. I think I did a very good job on the timing. And in the future, in the next slide is my contact. So if you're interested, you can follow me as Polyceria on Blue Sky app. And you can also check this tab called Polytop, which basically the small tag I created. I grow so many different kinds of water lilies here, and I post pictures, not daily, but almost week. Every week I will post something if they're blooming. And if you want to know more about water lily, you can also follow that tag. And there's some other slides later to show you some more gritty details about water lily. But before that, I want to just pause here and encourage you to come to see some of the water lily samples I brought. So I actually just dry some water lily samples, basically using the silica. You can just dry up the water moisture from the flower, and you can try preserve a flower like this. So I just did this variety and have flower. There's some more flower over there. And you can just come to front and just see. And there's another just small plant over there for you to just take a look. see some of the water leaves. So remember that I said that the smaller one. So these two is that Murasaki. Okay. So these two are that Murasaki water lily. So this is when they grow in the bigger pot, they can have flowers as big. If they grow in the teacup, they have flowers like this. This is very tiny. Yeah, they're the same shape, they're the same variety, just different in size. Flower pad, I didn't do it. So this is another very cool variety. They confuse so fast. Very cool thing is they have those kind of strips on their petals. So they're not they have multiple colors on the pad. Another funny thing for those varieties, they will basically changing color on every flower. All those color distribution are totally random. So every flower gonna look slightly different. And here are some two other varieties. And they're not fresh flowers, but you see how the color. And also you can see there are 4 different just petals on the back. And here is a small plant I brought. This is kind of like a seedling, but this is also the plant you can just grow in the top. So that's their root. And this is the tropical lily. This is microphylla, so that's their small. And this individual actually has a tuber already. So this is a small like a this is their tuber. So so every other plant, so I also brought a slightly bigger one and applied to. So almost like all those 3 plants, they have some structure that's similar to a tuber, which makes them very, very like tolerant to the harsh environment. So even though they are shaking like this, they can survive maybe for almost 2 weeks. They won't die. So if you're interested, you can clean this home and just put anything, basically everything here, bury them into the soil, and then leave any chips and leaves on the water, and you basically can grow this in a smaller pot like this. Another thing I forgot to mention in today's lecture is about the depth of the container. As long as this container is at least like 4 inches depth, so maybe this one is a little bit shallow. As long as you can make sure the soil surface to the water is at least like 2 inches depth, and that is enough for water lily. You can even grow water lily like a marsh level, like a they don't even need any standing water lily. You can grow them in almost like just moist soil, and that's some like more advanced gardening. So you need to take care of them more frequently. Basically, if you want to adjust their environment very extremely, like stuffing them into extreme small space, having them almost no water, which means you need to take more time to take care of them. But if you just giving them a very easy setting, like I mentioned in the double potting one, they can actually do very well. So yeah, anyone who wants to try something, you can grab any plant here. And also, this is the exact same species. That's the exact same species of microphylla. So that's a small plant, and this is slightly bigger plant. And you see those like fuzzy bud in the center. That's where they're gonna grow a new water lily in the future. Basically, the easiest way you can do is if you have a aquarium tank at home already, you can just toss this leaf upside down like this. Make sure that center is covering the water. And over maybe 2 weeks, it will grow a small plant in the center. And once that small plant has some roots, you can just remove those extra leaf outside. Maybe the leaf will slowly decay, and just remove those and then put that small plant in the soil, and they will grow into a small plant like this. Actually, all those 3 plants here are the plants I recovered from the leaf maybe 2 to 3 weeks ago. So basically, they can grow really fast. If you're local here in Florida or some like more southern part of the U.S., you can probably still grow those things kind of like in the outside. But any other part of here in the U.S. probably is getting more colder already. You would like to keep those things indoors so they can still survive. Yeah.
It's so hot here.
Yeah. Florida is kind of like the best place you can get to grow water lily. Yeah. So this is basically everything here for you. We still have maybe 10 minutes. If you guys are interested, I can just keep going about to tell you more details. I have some exercise if you want to. If you want to do that, yeah. So there are some more. Good. Yeah. So this part is totally optional. So if you don't want to like stay here, you can feel free to go, and also you can grab some plants if you want. So here I want to show you some more interesting details about the science behind the water lily. So remember before we said there are two groups of water lily called hardy water lily and tropical lilies. But in reality, more scientifically speaking, there are actually 6 groups of water lily here. And this is the picture I'm showing. Among those 6 groups, I already collected 5. I'm trying to get in the last one. So among all those 6 groups of water lilies, there are only one group called hardy lilies. They are cold tolerant. All other water lilies are tropical lilies. But those water lilies, what's really cool about them is they have different flowering time. Some of the tropical lilies, they actually try to attract beetles at the night. So they will open their flower after sunset and they will closing the flowers the next day when sun comes out. So the tropical lilies, so-called tropical lilies that we mentioned before, their more accurate name is actually called day blooming tropical lilies. And here, scientists try to group those kind of different 6 groups as subgenus, which means a smaller genus. And you see we have hardy water lily here, their scientific name is Nemethine. And the day blooming one is Procrasices, and some night blooming tropical lilies, they are called lotos. And then there are another group of tropical called Australian water lily. Australian water lily is actually a very fascinating group because they have a real blue color flower. It's totally different from most of other like purple flower you can see in the day blooming one. They have some very blue color. And although they are very hard to grow, you almost never find any like seller in the US to sell like Australian lily because they need so much hotter temperature. I guess the best place to grow them here is actually in Florida, maybe in southern Florida, and you can grow them and they can grow very well and they're blooming prolifically. And another very funny variety is here called South American night blooming. So they are blooming at night and also they are very smaller in size, so that's their flower. And another thing is the small city Australian, which is a very new subgenus. Scientists just separated them maybe like several years ago because they found out they're slightly different from the regular Australian ones. So that's some more details. So that's some like another diagram to show all the different species and all the 6 different varieties here. And here I just want to mention that in that South American, those night blooming water lilies, they are also actually a very good candidate for you to grow in the smaller size. So that's one of the water lily I have, and you can see I compare them with the size of my hand. This species is slightly bigger than my hands. So that's another option you can have if you're interested to have some smaller lily. And the perfect thing is they're blooming at night. So if you have to work during the day, you can still have some flower to see during the night. So that's another thing I want to bring up is unfortunately, most of the water lily blooming during the daytime. So if you're growing them at your home, you probably won't see them blooming when you come back home. But if you can probably set a small task at your office. Maybe that's something. So here you see most of the day blooming tropicals, they starting to blooming maybe at 6 to 7, depends on the sunlight of that day, and then they're closing at around maybe 5 to 6 p.m. And some hardy lilies, they were blooming 9 to afternoon. Australian, the longest flower, they were blooming from early morning to late afternoon. And night bloomers, they were blooming after sunset until next day. But that South American water lilies, especially this variety, they were basically only blooming for 2 to 3 hours. That's probably the only downside of the flower. Even though they're pretty, they only bloom very short. So yeah, that's everything about the water lily time. And finally, I want to introduce another concept called ISG. So remember before we said this kind of group of lily, we call them subgenus. So actually scientists or hybridizers try to crossing some different variety and they create a group of water lily called ISG. So they have a feature both like a tropical and a hardy. They have a rhizome like a hardy do, so they can be cold tolerant, but also they are prolific bloomer and they have many flower colors that only tropical have. So only tropical water lily have color like purple and blue. And people try to incorporating those purple and blue color into some cold tolerant variety. So they do a crossing. So basically they are hybridizing, making these 2 group of water lily mating on each other, and then they're creating some variety which are called ISG water lily. So that water lily store that I said before, that I think it's called aquatic oasis lily. This one, they're actually famous for importing very like rare and new ISG water lily. Those kind of ISG water lily are kind of like expensive, but they also have very amazing flowers. They are very huge and also cold tolerant. So that's another a small side note about the water lily variety. And that's everything I prepared for today. And thank everyone for coming. And then last note, like if anyone are interested to try some water lily here, you can just come here to pick up. And also all those dry flower samples, if you want to take one home, you can take them. I don't need them. So thank you everyone for coming. Yeah, we still have 8 minutes, and you can feel free to ask some questions. And yes, and also everyone can come here to grab something if you want. Take some lily pads, take a water lily home, or take some dry flowers if you want.
With this one, where it's small versus the large, how many years of a pot? This obviously small one versus large. How much?
I feel like they are very almost like a couple. So the smaller one or the smallest one is in the top like this. So especially for the the double potting, like if you in a cup is just this big, you basically can use a coffee cup to brew that inside, and then it can just stay small.
Okay, so that's fine.
Yeah, yes, yeah.
You buy the water lilies, does it come prepared already?
Yeah, so basically those 3 stores I recommend, or another reason I recommend those stores is because they're gonna send a plant like this. They're gonna send you a plant with pad. It's not just a root. So some other stores, those like crappy one from eBay, they will just send you a rhizome, which is very hard to recover. So you can grow a plant from those rhizome or just a tuber, but it's much harder. So I would say those 3 stores are for beginner plants. So you recommend a plant like this.
So then you're not gonna be low enough to where they float on top.
Actually, you don't need to. You can actually add in so much more water. They don't care. Water lily won't be dry. No, actually, they're scientifically unpaid. So if you just drown in them, they basically can grow very fast overnight, and next time they will have had a lot of water outside. Yeah, they are very
And lily submerged.
Yeah. They'll be fine. They don't worry about the being drowned. Yeah.
Well, I guess if you're doing that, you probably don't want to plant in water.
Yeah.
Like,
Actually, they're fine. So, water lily, another thing I did not mention for today, the detail thing is water lily can actually transform their shape. So, the thing that I shown here, they're mature, so their lily pads are floating on the surface. But during the winter, for hardies, if they are overwinter, or for the tropical, if they are go dormant, they can actually shed it off their floating leaf and having only like small cluster of leaf under the water. And those cluster of leaf are very like shaped, or they don't even need sun. Sometimes they can still survive like that. So that's another 2 different types. Basically, the strategy is water lily. Most of the aquatic plants are able to do those shape shifting because they in the environment in the wild, the water is not like stable. Sometimes the pond will dry, completely dry up, or the water level will change. Sometimes the flood will make the water so much deeper. So many aquatic plants can just shift their shape. Sometimes they're floating, sometimes they can go dormant in a smaller cluster, and once environment like that, they can recover. So that's some good features of aquatic plants. Yeah, another thing I forgot to mention is also aquatic plants like water lilies, they are kind of like low maintenance. Once you set them up, only thing you need to do is add water, like make sure they have water, and then as long as you have a light, you have a fertilizer them occasionally, and they will just bloom like that forever.
So, you know, for the not agricultural, or not very sanitary, to have it too close to food.
Yeah, that's actually another, I don't recommend to put them too close to the animal or something. Even, so if you're very careful, you'll maintain water quality very well, and it should be fine, but yeah, in general, we wouldn't recommend that because for nature system, it probably has some smells, and some smells that don't get that maybe it's better to stay from the kitchen area and try to, but actually in the living room, it's fine.
So you do have to maintain the quality of water by adding food.
No, you actually don't. So that's another thing I have no time to talk about today. But I mean, I do not add in the slide, but basically you just need to make sure you're getting maybe the first day of growing plants is not unfortunately a little body, but overweight. Once fortunately growing bigger, they will absorb most of the Actually, most of the thing that causing the water quality to go bad is from the leaf, and then they probably grow kind of like one to two plants together. And if you are interested, you can grow.
So keep them alive the next couple of days. Maybe float them like this.
You don't even need to float in them. You can just keep them in the bag like this.
Oh, for the next couple of days.
Yeah, for the next even couple 2 months there. 2 weeks. 2 weeks. I would recommend you putting them next to a window so they have some sunlight exposure to them. And other than that, they can grow if you need a if anyone want to take that, then we will just like I just start it back to the and also if you want some lily pad to try to recover, you can do that too. I bring all those kind of Ziploc bags and you can bring them.
I love North, so I just think it's too cold and I don't have to get space in North.
Yeah.
But we have cool questions though. Do you have like a favorite flower? Have like all the different ones?
You do.
Like a favorite flower?
Really good question. Some of those Australian so another thing I did not mention is the size of the flower. So even though I don't recommend they grow tropical, but they flower the biggest flower I think they can go is probably around the side or around this side if you're growing them in the pond. So, but if for some Australian water lily or some night bloomers, like the last time I mentioned, the night bloomers, some of them can have flower bigger than my face. That is amazingly big, but you have to grow them in an extremely big pond. So that's another very
Is there any way to see the presentation after today?
Oh yes, I will uploading them on YouTube.
Okay.
I
Oh, awesome.
yeah. I should uploading them on YouTube, and I will also post that on my Is anyone interested to the last one? Okay.
It's gonna last 2 weeks.
Yeah.
I wanna make sure I'm not gonna take it out of the room.
Yeah, so basically everything I brought here, they have a tuber on this, on also the kind of, even though if you take them home, then maybe some of the leaves are decayed, so you basically just stuff in the center, those small tuber-like structure into the soil, and they will slowly grow back. Those kind of clay soil, not clay, not pure clay, clay probably too heavy, but clay, yeah, heavy clay soil or sandy soil, human soil would be fine. Yeah, those are tropical ones. This is the microphone.
Poor fish.
The water they not show.
We clean the water for them.
Everyone coming. Thank you. Thank you.
About plants. Probably. Or about water.
Yeah.
So I live here.
Uh-huh.
Tampa.
Oh, you're living there, yeah.
So sure. Area for come outside. So I just get some come outside rather than algae.
Yes, that's
Not all the time.
Oh yeah, so basically algae control is actually by reducing the fertilizer. Hot, it doesn't matter, but if you apply the fertilizer, like I said before, put them into the soil, not spill them into the water, most time the algae will just disappear. So maybe at the very first month of your setup, maybe 2 weeks after setting up the pond, they may look a little bit green. But after that, if the water lily, once water lily covers the water surface, it will cover the line and algae will just disappear. So basically, after time has cycled very well, the water will be clean. Yeah. Do you want to try some of those?